Sometimes all a movie needs to hook you is a great title. And what horror movie has the best title of all time? Not gonna beat around the bush here. You've seen the title of this video. You know we're talking about Goke the Body Snatcher from Hell, but that's irrelevant. The best title is still Midnight Meat Train. I tricked you. Dance Puppet Dance. Still though, Goke Body Snatcher from Hell, pretty good title. Pretty good. Not good in the conventional sense. It certainly doesn't tell you anything about the movie. All you can really learn from it is that there's a guy named Goke in it, which there's not, and that he's a body snatcher who is from hell, which he isn't. But it does give you a very clear picture of the movie's tone, the bombast and melodrama you can expect. We could call it by its original title, Vampire Goke Medoro, but we won't. We won't ever. Goke, Body Snatcher from Hell, is a 1968 sci-fi horror film directed by Hajime Sato, loosely adapted from a tokusatsu series of the same name, which, sadly, I cannot find any footage of. Tokusatsu is, more or less, don't jump up my dick about it, Japanese for special effects, and is a genre of live-action television and movies in Japan that involves the heavy use thereof. Think Super Sentai, or Kamen Rider, or Ultraman, or that time Spider-Man had a giant robot friend. Or Godzilla. Godzilla would have been a better touchstone. Couple big Godzilla movies in the zeitgeist right now. Should have done one of those. Goke, Body Snatcher from Hell, tells the story of a group of survivors of the most doomed flight of all time. You won't believe how absolutely fucked this plane is. But that's appropriate because this movie is all about that doom and gloom. All about humanity's predisposition towards self-destruction and the looming threat of nuclear annihilation. Here, imagined as spooky aliens. Sure, it starts peacefully enough with the flight attendants handing out some complimentary goo. According to one horribly translated source, I think somewhere in an earlier draft of the script, the goo was meant to be the aliens, but it's not now. Now it's just some drinking goo. That piece is shattered when the pilots are alerted via radio of a bomb threat. They search through the passengers' luggage. They don't find the bomb, but they do find two things of note. Firstly, the world's scariest man. Secondly, an unclaimed suitcase that seems normal enough, except for the little vial of acid, which Captain Butterfingers over here drops, and looks like there's a rifle in there. Big deal, it's just a rifle, but here's the thing, the film set this up. It's actually alarming in this case to find a rifle on a plane because they established in a prior scene that a British ambassador was just assassinated with, get this, a rifle before he could bring peace to some sort of conflict in Southeast Asia that is not elaborated upon. Characters all remark on how unusual that is. That's so American. That's not how we assassinate people in Japan. When the rifle is discovered, its owner, who is the coolest man I've ever seen, hijacks the plane and forces the pilot to redirect from Tokyo to Okinawa, which the movie will later forget and talk about how they were going to get to Okinawa, but they weren't. They were supposed to go to Tokyo. Another thing that keeps happening is that birds are committing algorithm by flying very, very fast into the windows of the plane. I have thus fulfilled my contractual obligation by telling you that. They make a very funny splat sound effect as they do it, the one that I would use to be funny, but it's not meant to be funny, it's meant to be disturbing. We're told that this is a bad omen and must have something to do with the eerily red sky, which also, not a great omen. Given all of this information, given all of the discrete threats to this plane in particular that have been established already, which do you think will cause it to crash? Is it A, the bomb, B, the hijacker, C, this extremely frightening man, D, the mysterious bird thing, E, somehow, defying all logic, a new, different threat to the plane? The answer's obvious when you think about it. A passing UFO causes the plane's navigation equipment to short circuit, and one of the engines explodes, and that's bad for planes. Planes don't like that. Now that all those extras are dead, let's meet our cast, shall we? Firstly, we've got Ai Sugisaka, the plane's pilot and all-around man of action. Kazumi Asakura, the plane's flight attendant, who, it's implied, Sugisaka has some sort of romantic feelings towards, though never confirmed. Toshiyuki Saga, a space biologist, which, and I'm speaking in my capacity as someone who makes YouTube videos for a living, is not a real job. Dr. Momotake, the aforementioned spooky man and all-around psychiatrist. Mr. Mono, a corrupt senator who is up for re-election, conveniently enough, the following day. Tokuyasu, a piece of shit arms dealer who is toadying up to Mono in an attempt to secure a lucrative government contract. Noriko, Tokuyasu's wife, who is sleeping with Mono under Tokuyasu's instruction. This kid, who called in the bomb threat, not sure what his name is, not really an important character, don't know if he has one. Ms. Neal, an American lady whose husband got blowed up invading Vietnam, Rip Bozo, and the cool hijacker, who I will call Goke, as he spends most of the movie being the titular body snatcher from hell, even though technically, he's not that. You'll see, he just doesn't have another name. Sugisaka wakes up first, finds himself a little gun, and wakes up Kazumi. Aw, when are these two gonna get together? Then he's gotta chase down the bomber who fled the plane and protect him from a styrofoam avalanche. After which, the bomber pretends the whole bomb thing was just a prank, bro, but we, the audience, know that it wasn't a prank, bro, because we saw him hide the bomb by placing it in front of a rock or something. That might seem careless, but in Japanese culture, it's considered offensive for airplane pilots to look at rocks, probably. I don't know. So back on the plane, Mano and Tokuyasu were being complete dicks to everyone, get used to that, just berating everybody, complaining, throwing their weight around. The plane is somehow already out of water, and they're immediately pissed off and yelling at people about it. I'm not sure why the plane is out of water. Neal washes her face and is like, oh, I guess I used it all, which, I mean, there couldn't have been that much then. She has a normal-sized human face, and it wasn't particularly dirty. Goke wakes up, and because Tokuyasu is being such a distracting dipshit to Sugisaka, who already had a gun trained on him, manages to assemble his rifle and take Kazumi hostage. Great job, Tokuyasu, as always. Goke and Kazumi are walking around in the desert, and they find this. Naturally, they're a little spooked, and they get to running, but the spaceship manages to mesmerize Goke, making him walk very slowly, like holy shit so slowly, gradually building up the tension for just, I really can't stress this point enough, an absurd length of time, until this happens. Bet you didn't expect that. Who had forehead genitals on their Scaredy Cats bingo card? I mean, we already watched the movie with forehead dicks, we might as well get the movie with forehead vaginas. Meanwhile, Manu mouths off to Tokuyasu in the middle of fucking the man's wife, who is distracted by a moth, which no doubt symbolizes something. I wonder what. But Tokuyasu still gives him a bottle of whiskey. He wants that government contract so bad. Tokuyasu heads outside where the spooky psychiatrist Dr. Momotake encourages him to help them dig graves for all the dead guys and gleefully suggests that he dig his own grave as well. Cool guy to have around. Way to keep up morale, Dr. Momotake. Also, the plane is leaking gasoline, and as you can imagine, that will be relevant later. Sugisaka returns with Kazumi and the rifle, Goke seemingly having just mysteriously disappeared, not unlike a body snatcher from hell might do. The radio informs the group that rescue efforts have basically ceased, and so they're pretty much fucked. They want to head out, but there's a murderer wandering around, and Kazumi's too scared to say where he is. I guess the only solution here is to let Dr. Momotake hypnotize her, just let the world's most sinister man poke around in her brain. Give him that power over another human being. Why not? It makes perfect sense, because I know that if I were too frightened, I would want this guy to help calm me down. Under hypnosis, Kazumi remembers the coolest shit I've ever seen, where the goo climbs into Goki's head pussy and starts piloting him around like a little flesh mech, like the goo is Zex and Goke is tall geese. He's now what you might call a body snatcher from hell. A lot of the survivors are disturbed by this, none more so than the bomber who accidentally pushes Momotake off a cliff. That gets the bomber locked into the cockpit, which they've turned into a brig. Downtown in Cliffsville, Goke sneaks up on Dr. Momotake and gorbles his blood, because this alien parasite manifests as basically just a vampire. All of that sinister foreshadowing about Dr. Momotake? That was nothing. Turns out he's just a creepy guy. Sometimes a creepy guy was just a creep. That's all. Well, okay, no, that's... Alright, to be fair, one thing that's going to get lost in this video is the tone the movie is establishing. I'm having a little bit of fun, as I like to do, but make no mistake. This is not tongue-in-cheek. The movie is taking this all as seriously as a heart attack. As over-the-top and operatic as it can be at times, it's still bleak and paranoid and all about the ways that people crack under pressure, the ways that stress can remove the veneer of civility and make people act irrationally, even violently. Momotake establishes this early on, because I think maybe in 1968 the idea of people's mental health being a huge concern in such a crisis wouldn't have been as obvious as it is to modern audiences.
と言って逃げ出すこともできない。こういう時人間はどうなるか。 自分だけが助かりたくて縁をむき出しにする。
I do love how the victims go pale as Goke gorbles their blood. That's such a nice creepy touch. Why don't more vampire movies do that? One thing I know why vampire movies don't do is how much Goke mugs to the camera. Look at him, this little stinker. Goke pretends to be injured, luring out Miss Neal, who frantically demands that he be treated. The wound on his forehead, which would remind any normal person of a vagina, reminds her instead of her husband who got blown the fuck up invading Vietnam, Rip Bozo. That's her thing. Her thing is remembering a man. Miss Neal is an interesting character. Not in the sense that she's an interesting character, but because she's an American who speaks English. That's the language they usually speak in America, in case you didn't know. But it seems she can also fully understand Japanese, so like, that's a little rude. Maybe speak Japanese if you know Japanese. Some of the characters speak English, others don't, but one thing they all have in common is that they all speak Japanese. Mono, for example, does not speak English.
Oh no, he's hurt! I've got to help him, otherwise he'll die! Like my husband! He was wounded in the face too!
Unless that English is accompanied by Japanese subtitles, in which case he can understand it for some reason.
If we stay here, the man will come back. Let's get out of here, Mr. Mono.
Maybe he can just read the subtitles, like maybe he can break the fourth wall like Deadpool, I don't know. Tokuyasu reveals that his master plan all along was to get Mono to drink a bunch of whiskey, knowing that they were out of water, so he'd get dehydrated. That's his revenge for getting cucked, even though that was his choice, and it's all going according to Keikaku. Mono reveals he never had any intent of giving Tokuyasu that fat government contract he was dangling over his head, and Tokuyasu goes fucking ballistic, forcing everyone out of the plane at rival point, leaving himself alone with the space vampire, and that turns out to be a bad decision on his part if you can believe it. The group hears him screaming and heads inside and sees his dead body completely gorbled of blood. They finally put the pieces together. Of course, it's that classic movie monster known for drinking blood. Aliens. Noriko is pumped though. With her shitty husband dead, she's now free to make her own choices in life, no longer under his thumb. She won't be judged, she won't be held back, she'll feel the rain on her skin. No one else can feel it for her. And that makes it bitterly ironic that she is immediately kidnapped by Goke and brainwashed into becoming a body snatcher from hell. Hope you enjoyed those 2 minutes of Agency Noriko. It's all you're gonna get in your entire life. The group goes looking for Noriko, who psychically gives a big speech from the aliens known as the Goke Midoro, about how they've been waiting to destroy humanity for a long time now, and now that humanity is weak from infighting and the threat of nuclear annihilation, they can finally strike. The aliens think that humans deserve to be killed for being aggressive and warlike, and this is evidenced by the plane survivors becoming aggressive and paranoid as their situation deteriorates. First of all, if any human wants to criticize humans for being warlike and aggressive, sure, yeah, okay. Can't really argue with you. I mean, look at the fucking news. But hey, Goke Midoro, your thing is that you want to exterminate humanity, and that's a pretty warlike and aggressive thing to do. So maybe take a big long look in that deep dark mirror, bud. Secondly, the two main characters, Sugisaka and Kazumi, remain morally upstanding, kind, and helpful throughout the runtime of the entire movie, despite being constantly betrayed by literally everyone else and having good reason not to be. Kinda seems like your whole premise is flawed there, Goke Midoro. Kinda seems like humans are sometimes good, actually. Anyway, what else you got to say, Noriko? Oh, okay. That's the first of 2 skeleton jump scares in this movie. The survivors go back to the plane to plan out their next move. Here's the problem though, they just plumb don't know how any of this works. What are they gonna do? Everyone but the 2 nice people pretty much immediately land on a course of action, which is to sacrifice someone to Goke in order to gain info. And okay, that's a leap, but sure. So, who are we gonna kill? Who stands out here as a very killable person? Someone who's not like everybody else. Who are we gonna kill? They are so ready to kill Miss Neal, especially Mono, of course, because he always makes the cruelest decision he can in every situation. But she's American, so she knows what to do in this situation. Then they remember, hey, wait a minute, we have a murderer in the brig. We can just let the vampires gorble that guy. And everybody but Sugisaka and Kazumi are on board with tossing him out, so now our heroes are locked in the brig for not murdering. How ironic. There, they stick to their principles but try to understand where everyone else is coming from.
杉坂さん、ニールさんは怖かったのよ。
それは分かってる。しかし、人間としてしていいことと悪いことがある。
Real warlike and aggressive behavior from these 2 humans. So they throw the bomber to Goke, but he uses, get this, a bomb, and blows a hole in the side of the plane. And so like, That's bad news. Neil and Mono make a run for it, quite an unlikely pair given how eager he was to murder her but moments ago, and they're confronted by Goke, and Mono stands his ground, defends his comrade, and valiantly sacrifices himself. Nah, I'm just kidding, obviously he runs away. He leaves Neil to solo Goke, and it's unclear from the shot, but she either misses or he's bulletproof. That is never clearly established whether you can just shoot him. And she gets gorbled immediately. Mono's back in Planetown, and they try to help him back into the plane, which he uses as an opportunity to immediately fuck over Sugisaki and Kazumi for no real reason. It doesn't really benefit him to do it, he's just the worst. Sugisaki and Kazumi remember they have a bucket of Chekhov's gasoline and use it to douse Goke and start a big fire, which causes his brain slime, I guess you could call it the thought slime in his head, one might say, to ooze on out. Remember how the ship used a mysterious light to attract people? Well, the slime is attracted to light, you see. That's what the moth earlier represented. I was only pretending not to know. I've already watched this movie. This symbolism underscores GTBSFM's themes about humanity's warlike nature. A moth, or ooze in this case, can't help but be drawn to flame and will destroy itself pursuing it. Just like we, humans, also invented a big light that blows up cities, which we shouldn't have done, because that's where most of us live. There's simply no resisting the call to the void. It is in our nature to destroy ourselves. And I don't love that. Neither the human capacity towards self-destruction, or this movie's view that this is somehow fundamental to human nature. It cannot be resisted or halted in any way. I mean, that's a pretty miserable outlook, albeit an understandable one coming from Japanese artists in the middle of the Cold War. As the only country to ever have nuclear weapons used against them, I can see how the prospect of global thermonuclear war felt like less of an alarming hypothetical and more like a looming inevitability. And the movie makes clear that the invention of the atom bomb was the point of no return for humanity. After that, we were made so weak and divided that it was inevitable that the Goke Midoro would destroy us.
広島に原爆が投下されて以来、円盤の目撃例は急激に増えてる。つまり、宇宙の生物は人間がくだらん戦争に明け暮れしている隙を狙って攻撃しようとしているのかもしれないんです。
Throughout the movie, we see this destabilization happening firsthand. The ambassador who was killed, Neil's husband being killed in the Vietnam War, Ripbozo, this plane which has a corrupt politician and arms dealer on it being simultaneously bombed and hijacked by two people whose overlapping motivations we don't even learn. Likewise, the survivors turn on one another and make irrational decisions rather than working together. And they're picked off one by one, even though Goke is just one guy and not particularly powerful and maybe not even bulletproof. The group represents a microcosm of the film's view of human nature, where even if there are a few good people, some of them will be corrupted, even if only momentarily, and the others won't be able to make a difference in the face of overwhelming cruelty and selfishness. The movie uses a lot of stock photos shown in this blood-red high-contrast filter to drive home that the violence it's commenting on isn't hypothetical, it's happening in the real world, and the self-destruction has already begun. We are on pace to destroy ourselves. So that's kind of bleak. Anyway, the sci-fi brain ooze climbs into Saga's head and gorbles up Mono, fucking finally. Our heroes make a run for it and manage to lead Goke Saga to the styrofoam rock waterfall and get him encrushulated. Finally, they've done it. They've killed exactly one body snatcher from hell. That's the good news. The bad news, which I think kind of takes the wind out of their sails a little bit, is that while the survivors have been dealing with their own personal issues, the aliens already invaded and killed everybody. Everyone is dead. It's too late. The movie closes on an invasion fleet of flying saucers and the Earth turning brown and then into a lifeless dead rock. So are you now getting what I mean about how this movie has a kind of hopeless tone? Sugisaki does say it's too late to repent, which I guess could imply that we in the real world still have time to repent, but it's not clear how or if we could. The movie presents humanity's self-destruction as inevitable. This is just who we are. And of course, none of that absolves the characters, or by proxy, we the audience, of the responsibilities of being kind and cooperative in the meantime. But ultimately, it won't make a difference in the long run. We will wipe ourselves out. It's just what we do. For that reason, I've heard this movie described as nihilistic, not in the philosophy major pedant way, but in the common usage way about how everything is meaningless. I don't think that's fair, really. Goke the Body Snatcher from Hell presents life as inherently meaningful, which is what makes it tragic that we can't get our shit together. If it were nihilistic, we wouldn't be moved or upset that the Goke Midoro wipe out humanity. It wouldn't frustrate us when the characters make selfish or violent choices. It presents us as trapped within a system of violence and cruelty which is bigger than us. One which we can't meaningfully challenge. After all, a person or group of people can't fight an atom bomb. Our individual kindnesses can't outcompete the cruelty of the powerful. In the opening, the characters are discussing ill omens, because even the sky is against them. They see it coming, they're just helpless to stop it. It's fate. Doom comes from the top. The film's villains, Mano and Tokuyasu, are both extremely powerful people. Mano is a senator, a corrupt government official. He considers himself more important than other people, entitled to more resources, to a better chance of survival, and for his actions not to be judged by his lessers. He refuses to believe that there are aliens even when the evidence is right in front of his face, eating his face. Just out of some misguided conformist desire not to consider silly ideas seriously, and he decides which ideas are and are not silly. Things, after all, work a certain way. There's a way things are done, and it's the only way things can be done, because that way gives him what he wants. Why would he consider anything else? Tokuyasu represents, and you guessed it, capitalism. I am a living parody of myself. He's a greedy businessman happy to cozy up to, even encourage government corruption, even when that means prolonging literal wars. At first, he seems venal and obsequious, but we learn eventually he's a master manipulator, plying Mano with vices until he gets what he wants. Not unlike how we are all prodded into complacency with capitalism's horrors with consumerist goods, such as hamburger or computer. His plan to get revenge on Mano for doing the thing that he himself told him to do involves withholding a vital resource, letting Mano die from privation, the way that capitalism kills people. Tokuyasu is also deeply patriarchal. He basically forces his wife to sleep with Mano, which she just kind of zones out during, thinking about the thematic resonance of moths. He treats her like a commodity to be consumed for his benefit. That's why she's so happy when he dies, because she's finally free to be herself and cast off the shackles that he placed on her, but then she's a skeleton, so fuck her, I guess. Women in this movie are kind of just vessels to be traded back and forth as hostages. It's also telling that these two guys are paired together, that government corruption and capitalist corruption are presented as intertwined, mutually reinforcing structures, enabling the worst aspects of one another, just like in real life. But not everyone is driven to selfishness or cruelty out of sheer malice. Miss Neal is frightened and agrees to sacrifice the bomber because she rightly assumes that if she didn't go along with it, they'd just kill her instead, which they were gonna do. But she's not a bad person. She stuck out her neck to help an injured Goke, a man she knew was dangerous. We know she cares about others. We know that she's brave even. But even the brave can succumb to cowardice in the moment. Likewise, Saga goes along with the sacrifice plan because he wants to study the aliens. And this might be his only chance. He is whipped up into a frenzy by Mano and has a lapse in judgment. He later expresses extreme remorse and urges the heroes to leave him behind because he's injured and will only slow them down. And he believes he no longer deserves to live anyway. He's willing to die to help his friends, which is virtuous, but still capable of doing something hideous under the right circumstances, as are we all. And of course, none of that sympathetic portrayal excuses their actions. As Sugisaka himself points out,
しかし人間としてしていいことと悪いことがある
a very polite way of critiquing murder. Unfailingly, whenever the people who've done these horrible things need help, Sugisaka and Kazumi are always willing to lend a hand over and over again, no matter the personal cost, implying that to be a good person in the movie's logic means being kind to everyone, even those who've done bad things and don't necessarily deserve it, which the Goke Midoro decidedly do not. In a nihilistic movie, their eradication of humanity would be just yet another in the string of cruelties characters visit upon one another throughout the story. They might even be right to wipe us out, because we're dicks. But it's not treated like that. It's treated as especially heinous, especially horrific and shocking. The imagery of people lying dead, piled on top of one another in a grim echo of battlefield photos of mass graves, certainly doesn't give me the impression you're meant to agree with them. And furthermore, in Japanese culture, it's considered very disrespectful to eradicate all life on Earth. Overall, I'd argue that Goke, Body Snatcher from Hell, may be bleak, it may be sad, but the tragedy comes from a very humanist respect for life, not nihilistic rage. It's a sorrowful, desperate plea to be better and to deserve better before we destroy everything. It's a tragedy because we should care. We should love our fellow man, and often we don't. Don't worry though, there's still reason to have faith in humanity because of my patrons over at patreon.com/scaredycats. In particular, I'd like to thank Cooper Holmes, Joe McClory, Liz Widow, Maston Ginger, James Garford, C.H. Phillips, Gideon, Devin Kaler, Andrew Roger, and Spooky Heather Sylvia.
And I, Bobby Duke, the star of the channel, would like to thank the following people who's also the stars of the channel. We got Connor Patrick Griffin, Chuckleberry Finn, Jay Torney, Rachel Rat, Kato Moore, Carpad, Josh Manes, Hyla Tracy, Louisa Brito, and Jesse. If you want a cartoon Babadook to say your name, first of all, weird priority. Second, go to patreon.com/scarycats. I don't even know what this movie was. I don't know why they picked these movies. I said, hey Mildo, why don't you do one of them Godzillas you like so much? And they said, nah, I got something even better. So I don't know how this one's gonna go. You know, like the YouTube algorithm even like Body Snatchers from Hell? I don't know these things.